Hello, I'm Olu. Today we're going to do the PPP, Purchasing Power Parity. So stick around, you might like what I've got for you. So what I'm going to do right now, I'm going to share my screen notebook, and we're just going to talk about what the PPP is. Purchasing Power Parity. I want you to imagine that you are in the UK. Okay, you have £1,000. You can buy a certain amount of goods and services they call in a basket of goods and services that they call it. But you can buy a certain amount of goods and services for £1,000. If you have a purchasing power parity, once you've converted that into, let's say, dollars, you're going to go to America, you can buy the same amount of goods and services in the USA. Then you're said to have what you call a purchasing power parity. Parity simply means equal. So let's go into a definition of this, okay? Purchasing power parity are the rates of currency conversion that tries to equalize the purchasing power of different currencies. In other words, if you're going to go to Switzerland, your £1,000, you can buy a certain amount of goods and services in the UK. If you go to Switzerland, you've converted your money into Swiss francs, you can buy the same amount of goods and services in Switzerland. Then you're said to have a purchasing power parity. It's a great theory, but in reality, it really happens, especially when you're comparing richer nations with perhaps slightly poorer nations. Let's put it that way. Developed nations with maybe developing nations. There's a big difference. And the best way of highlighting that is having a look at India. That would be a good way. Okay, so let's have a look at what's happening in India here. So I'm going to play this video for you. And essentially, it talks about the difference between goods and services. It talks about standardized goods. For example, if you're thinking about Microsoft or you're thinking of Apple, those goods are standardized. The shipping costs are very low, so the prices are pretty much the same wherever you go. However, when you're talking about services, it's very different. I want you to imagine a barber in Mali. His charge will be different from someone's charge in Kensington or someone's charge in Manhattan. It'll be a completely different type of charge, and that's to do with wages. It's to do with rent. It's to do with so many factors. Labor is not easily transferable. You can't suddenly transfer wages like you can transfer a good, and that's what this video is about. So we're going to just play a little bit of it for you, and I will stop it after a while. So we'll go into somewhere.
United States.
Let's go. Let's actually start it here.
Okay, that looks pretty.
Yeah.
Namaste.
Namaste.
So, can you show me one of your nice phones?
Yeah, this is the best one. The Apple, the new one, the 7 Plus.
Great. Okay, that looks pretty good. So, yeah, कितने का है?
Yeah, 72,000. It's for 72,000.
Manga.
Nahi, sasta. It's cheap now.
70,000 rupees. That's about $1,000. At least as much, maybe a little bit more than you'd pay in the United States. And that makes sense because this good is easily tradable. Tradable goods sell for about the same price everywhere in the world. Because if it were a lot cheaper here, people would buy it here and sell it in the United States. Arbitrage means that goods which are easily tradable, they sell for about the same price everywhere. Now, the situation, however, is very different when it comes to services. Services are hard to trade. And that means that the price of services, the price of labor, it can differ a lot in different places in the world. In fact, I think I need a haircut. Let's go.
Okay, so you kind of go what he was talking about there. It was quite an interesting situation, and that's what happens, and that's why PPP hardly ever works. It can't, you just can't get it because in these kind of countries, it's hard. You can't transfer labor. The idea of a barber in Delhi going over to Manhattan, it has immigration issues. It has so many issues. It just can't happen. And you need the price of it is determined again by the wages in that community and everything else like that. So bear in mind. So when you get a set of data, and it talks about maybe the nominal GDP per capita is extremely low. Okay, you need to bear in mind and look at the data. Has it been adjusted for PPP? Because that may not necessarily tell you the standard of living. And that's a great evaluation argument. Okay, so what we're going to do actually is going to go over and look at some data. Okay, what we're going to look at Switzerland to start off with. And Switzerland's a very interesting country. It's it's relatively very, actually, I would say it's very expensive. We have what you call the Big Mac index. Rather than comparing it with goods and services, we use what you call Big Macs because Big Macs are standardized throughout the world. So rather than using different types of goods and services, very clever economists came up with the idea of the Big Mac index, comparing the price of McDonald's all around the world. If the PPP works, then you should be able to convert your money and still buy the same Big Mac. But what you will find is that in Switzerland, Big Mac is the most expensive in the world. Okay, so it gives an idea that maybe the standard of living is actually quite expensive in Switzerland. So let's have a look. Let's look at the nominal GDP. It's 80,296. That's per capita. Nominal GDP per capita, 80,296. Once we've converted that as to what you can actually buy, it gives 66,307. So that indicates that things are pretty expensive. It'll be interesting to actually compare that with maybe African countries. So let's compare that with African countries and see what we get. Okay, so if we go down and compare it with Benin, 827 per capita. That really is very low. Okay, on the face of it, it's very low. But when you convert it into when it's adjusted for PPP, yes, it's still very low. It's incredibly low, but you can see that actually you can buy a lot more for 827. You can actually buy goods and services up to 2,276. So it's really important to bear that in mind that you need to know what can you actually buy to determine the standard of living in that particular country. The last one I will give you will be Botswana, 7,894. 7,894 GDP per capita, nominal GDP per capita. But when you convert that when it's adjusted for PPP, you can actually buy $17,024 of goods and services. So that shows the money can go a lot further in these nations. The takeaway here, the key takeaway is being able to know how to use the PPP in your argument, especially when you're talking about developing economics. Understand, even though the GDPs per capita are extremely low, however, you need to adjust it for PPP, and that gives you a greater understanding of the standard of living. Hopefully, this has been helpful. If it has, I'm going to give a lot more of these economic videos. Share, like, and subscribe. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.